I'll be 5 minutes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. My humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we have Varka, Dosha, Doshna, Krishna Priya, Kajal, Gauri, Komal, Lakshmi, Raki, Roshni, Shobha, Aruna, Chetna, Damni, Hitika, Keshav, Komal, hello, Meena, Nimerta. Nimerta has expanded herself into two different channels. And then we have Rani and Ritika and Rohit G. If I'm missing anyone, please forgive me. Savita, Tanya, Varsha. If you'd like to turn on your camera, that would be the best, because then everyone can see you and we can see each other. I apologize for the background noise. I hate these places. I'm at a fast food place because I had to get some new tires for my car, and I had to drive far away from home to get these. And so I had no choice but to stop in this fast food area, hence the background noise. I apologize, but I'm with you 100%, and we have Rupa Goswami with us, so we just, yeah. So let's start. We'll read text one, and then what we can do today is actually just start reading the purport to text one. And what we can do is merci. What we can do is each of us can do one paragraph And then, if you feel you have any questions, or if I feel inspired to share some realizations, then we'll do that. So we'll get as far as we can with text 1. And then we'll probably do the same tomorrow. And then we have some days off, and that's when I'll give some questions, and I'll speak to Bimal Prasad Prabhu, and we'll get a little bit more structure into our course. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. Wait, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Was I muted the whole time? Were you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes,
yes,
Prabhu. Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Yes,
Om Namo
Prabhuji.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So you can see me and hear me. We're good. All right. So I'll read the Sanskrit, and then as you know from yesterday, I tried to get as many devotees to participate. So when I ask questions and stuff, it'd be great if everyone could participate. But I'll read the Sanskrit, and then someone can volunteer to read the translation, and then, as I said, we'll just go through the purport. Okay. All right. Vachu vegam manasakroda vegam jiva vegam udaropasta vegam etan veganyo vishaheta dhira sarvam apimam pritivim sasishyat. It's funny. I have to, when I read this, remember yesterday I told you about this Sankirtan leader that I had when I was a brahmachari in Los Angeles temple. This is the Prabhupada disciple called Suradas. And as I mentioned, he had a sort of a very heavy side, but he was also super funny sometimes. And so he would say, you see, the nectar of instruction gives us irrefutable evidence that Italian food is Vedic, that Italian food is 100% bona fide for devotees of Krishna, because in verse 1 of Nectar of Instruction, you have the word pasta, udaro pasta. Of course, it's not the same word, but he would say, you see, it's right there. It says pasta right here. So that shows that Italian food is bona fide. And he would also quote Bhaktivinoda Thakur. As some of you may know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the father of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. He was a great acharya in our tradition, and so there's one poem in Bengali by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he says Vane Tako, Vane Tako, like different Vane Tako, Grihe Tako, Vane Tako, like whether you're a grihasta or whether you're a sannyasi, just chant the holy name. So he would say that song shows that Mexican food is bona fide and Vedic because the word taco is there. Anyway, okay, who would like to read the translation? Okay, Bharka, go ahead. Nice and loud.
Hare Krishna. Translation. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger and the urges of the tongue, belly and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. Hare Krishna.
Very good. So now who would like to read the first paragraph? Okay, we have Kishori. And then Shobha, you'll read the next one. And then Malika, you'll read the third one.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Jai Prabhupada.
Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam 6.1.9 till 10, Parishit Maharaj placed a number of intelligent questions before Sukdev Goswami. One of these questions was, Why do people undergo atonement if they cannot control their senses?
Now, what is,
For
excuse me,
instance,
sorry to interrupt you, but who does not know what the word atonement mean? You can say it out loud, because on my screen, I only see 5 or 6 of you unless I switch to the other screen. So it's better. Let's put it this way. Can anyone tell us what is atonement?
Regret of our wrongdoing.
What is it?
Regrets of our wrongdoing.
No, it's not so much regret, actually. I'm sorry to correct you, but it's not a regret. The regret is part of it. The sentiment of regret is part of it, but it's an actual, well, it's more than a regret.
Repayment?
Huh?
Repayment of our activities.
What kind of what of our activity?
Repayment of our activities. Like
It's more of a correction. Yeah, like you did something wrong, and so now you have to do X, Y, Z
yeah,
to
paper.
purify or to pay back or to correct your mistake. For example, in the Catholic tradition, when you commit a sin, you go to the priest. As a matter of fact, I think Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. We'll see it a little bit later. You go confess. You know, my dear priest, I'm sorry, I sinned, I did this or that. And so the priest will tell you, okay, you have to chant 25 Our Lord that are in heaven prayers. And in Hinduism, we also see that, you know, because you did this or this sinful deed, some Brahmin will tell you, okay, you have to, I don't know, you have to chant the Vishnu Sahasranam on a Thursday afternoon, or you have to do, you know, a puja to Saturn, you know, to or to Jupiter on a Wednesday, or you have to feed dogs, you know, or something like that, you know. Why? So that you could counteract. The idea is to counteract. So atonement means that, to do some sort of repenting activity. And that's why I corrected whoever said that it's just feeling regret. It's feeling, but it's doing something about it to counteract the, and what's the Sanskrit or Hindi, the Sanskrit term for it? It starts with P. Praya, what is it?
Something करके.
Prashit.
Prashita.
Yes. Prayaschita.
Prashita.
Very good. Prayaschita.
Prashit.
Okay, so continue, please. Go on.
For instance, a thief may know perfectly well that he may be arrested for stealing, and he may actually even see a thief arrested by the police. Yet he continues to steal. Experience is gathered by hearing and seeing. One who is less intelligent gathers experience by seeing, and one who is more intelligent gathers experience by hearing. When an intelligent person hears from the law books and the Shastras or scriptures that stealing is not good and hears that a thief is punished when arrested, he refrains from theft. A less intelligent person may first have to be arrested and punished for stealing to learn to stop stealing. However, arrested, a foolish man may have the experience of both hearing and seeing and may even be punished. But still, he continues to steal. Even if such a person atones and is punished by the government, he will then commit theft as soon as he comes out of jail. If punishment in jail is considered atonement, what is the benefit of such atonement?
So you
Thus,
see, that's the
Parishit
point. So to be clear, the point that is being made, thank you, is that the atonement for a thief in jail is jail, right? For a thief, you know, if you get caught, then you did the sin, and so you atone by being thrown into jail. But if you come out of jail and you again commit theft, then one can ask, what is the use of such atonement if you're going to continue doing the same sin afterwards, right? So on the other hand, if you do some atonement and then there is some sort of change of character, so that, for example, when you get out of jail, you no longer steal ever again, then we could say that atonement was worth it, correct? So please go on. Thus Parikshit Maharaj inquired. I'll just read the Sanskrit. Drishra Shruthabhyam Yat Papam Janan Apyatman No Hitam Karoti Bhuyo Vishvasaha Paryas Chitam Ato Khatam Kvachin Nivartate Bhadrat Kvachit Charati Tat Punaha. Excuse me, Prayas Chitam Ato Partam Manye Kunjara Shochavat. So please continue.
He compared atonement to an elephant's bathing. The elephant may take a very nice bath in the river, but as soon as it comes onto the bank, it throws dirt all over its body. What then is the value of its bathing? Similarly, many spiritual practitioners chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and at the same time commit many forbidden things, thinking that their chanting will counteract their offenses. Of the 10 types of offenses one can commit while chanting the holy name of the Lord, this offense is called Namno Balad Yasya Hi Papa Buddhi, committing sinful activities on the strings of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Similarly, certain Christians go to church to confess their sins, thinking that confessing their sins before a priest and performing some penance will relieve them from the results of their weekly sins. As soon as Saturday is over and Sunday comes, they again begin their sinful activities, expecting to be forgiven the next Saturday. This kind of Prayashchit or atonement is condemned by Parishit Maharaj, the most intelligent king of his time. Sukhdev Goswami, equally intelligent as befitting the spiritual master of Maharaj Parishit, answered the king and confirmed that his statement concerning atonement was correct. A sinful activity cannot be counteracted by a pious activity. Thus, real Pashachit atonement is the way of awakening of a dormant Krishna consciousness.
So this, thank you, Kishori. So this is an important sentence that Prabhupada concludes this paragraph with, that a sinful activity cannot be counteracted by a pious activity, which is kind of counter intuitive, we could say, because you could say, okay, I committed some sin, so then I'll do some sort of material prayaschita. And so you see, we have to distinguish between taking shelter of Krishna or God, the Supreme Lord, and doing any type of tapasya or even offering to some devata. We all know the difference between devas and Bhagavan, correct? I mean, we're all devotees of Krishna, we're all Vaishnavas, so we believe that there's a difference between Vishnu or Krishna and, say, Shiva or Ganesh or Saraswati, or right? And we have all respect to them, but we see them as, what are they? Are they Bhagavan, or are they, what do we call them?
Demigods.
Exactly. By the way, demigods, when you think about it, is not a really accurate way to describe them. And I'll tell you why. And it's not, it doesn't take a genie to figure this out, but we don't often think about it. What does demi mean? Demi means?
Half.
Yes, exactly, half. So a demigod, technically speaking, means someone who is half human, half devata, right? Now, what text do we have that have, okay, I'll just say the 5 Pandavas, right? The 5 Pandavas, they are actually demigods because their mother, of course, was a pure devotee, but their mother was a human, not an ordinary human, of course, a pure devotee, but a human nonetheless. But their fathers were, Indra and different devatas. So in that sense, they are real, demigods. They're half gods, right? Half human, half devata. But still, we use that term demigod to speak about actual devas, like, Shiva and Ganesh and so on, Indra, Surya, and so on. They're not demigods. They're full-on gods, with a small g. So it's just a small parenthesis. But coming back to this point, we have to know the difference between taking, is the background noise too loud? I mean, I'm so sorry, I can't change it. Is it disturbing or can you hear me okay?
No, it's perfectly fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, okay. Because
Yeah.
in my ear, it's really kind of disturbing what to do. So the gods and the demigods, they cannot free you from sin in a sense, because they themselves are, within this system that the only independent person, supremely independent, who is Swaraj, as the first canto of the Bhagavatam says, Krishna or Vishnu has that freedom. So if you do prayaschita in the sense of taking shelter of Krishna, right, then yes, a sinful activity can be nullified by a transcendental activity. But if you notice here, Prabhupada says a pious activity, right? A sinful activity cannot be counteracted by a pious activity. So there's a difference between, okay, I'll ask you, one of you tell me, and just take the mic because I don't see all of you. What is the difference between a pious activity and a transcendental activity?
Prabhuji, please repeat the question.
The question is, what is the difference between a pious activity, P-I-O-U-S, as Prabhupada says here? What is the difference between a pious activity and a transcendental activity, or a devotional activity, or a bhakti activity? What's the difference?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes? Malika?
Yes, Prabhu. Pious activity is something that that we do in the mode of goodness, and transcendental activity is something that we do in the service of Krishna.
Okay, and in the mode of goodness, and it's usually involving who?
Involving demigods.
Yes, correct. And so, very good, very good. Piety is in the mode of goodness, and it's offering puja or worship or sacrifice to this or that demigod, as we call them, devata. But it's not pure, it's not bhakti. It's not bhakti. And they are limited in what they can do for us, the demigods, anyway. You see? So when you're entangled in karma, and so therefore, and this is a pop quiz for you guys, you should know this. What is the verse from the Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada by far most often quoted in all his purports, in his conversations, in his morning walks, in his letters? Which is the verse from all the 700 verses that Prabhupada quoted the most? And it's very relevant to this point here. Anyone want to guess? It's the verse from the night. Huh?
18.66.
Who said that? Who said that?
Roshni.
Rashni, yes, you got it. 1866. It goes like this. Sharira Vijajal Jodendriya Taik. Oh no, sorry. Wrong verse. How does it go? How does, yes. So when Krishna is saying Sarva Dharman Parityajya, right? This Sarva Dharman includes all these pious activities. You see? When Krishna is telling Arjuna and all of us, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam. What does Ekam mean? Everyone knows that because you all speak Hindi. Eka or Ekam means? Only one.
Only
Mam
one.
Ekam. Mam Ekam. Correct. Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Go to me for shelter alone. Go to me alone for shelter. Right? And Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksham Mashucha. Don't worry, all your sins I will forgive. See? So as Vaishnavas, we believe that the only person who can save us from our sin is God with a capital G. It's Krishna or Vishnu, right? And the Devatas, they can maybe make our life better in the material world, but then there's like exchange of, it's like a business exchange, What can you do for me? And I'll do for you. And they're limited, especially in terms of giving moksha. What very famous story that came out in a movie now? I mean, did you see Mahavatar? Did you all see Mahavatar movie?
Yes,
Yeah.
Prabhuji.
So what did Hiranyakashipu want?
Devotion.
He
No.
don't want to die.
Who,
He
who
don't
said
want
who
to
said
die.
who said devotion? Better not say. It's not he did, that's the last thing he wanted was devotion.
He wanted to be just God, all supreme power. He wanted all supreme power.
You Prahlad,
being
you're probably
God.
confused with Prahlad. Prahlad wanted devotion, yes. But
He don't
Hiranyakashipu
want to
wanted
die.
He
He
wants
don't want
Exactly.
to die.
he wanted
He want to
immortality.
become
He wants
immortal.
immortal.
Immortality.
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 Yes.
Right. And can the devatas give immortality?
no.
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 No, they
No.
don't have.
Exactly. So let's continue. Who did I say would read next?
Toshna.
Okay, go for it. With a real atonement. Someone's muted. Whoever is supposed to read, unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna,
What? Hare Krishna.
real
What-
atonement.
Can you unmute your and can you read?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, go for it.
Real atonement involves coming to real knowledge, and for this, there is a standard process. When one follows a regulated hygienic process, he does not fall sick. A human being is meant to be trained according to certain principles to revive his original knowledge. Such a methodical life is described as tapasya. One
So
can be
sorry, allow me to interrupt you, Naina, because this is interesting. Prabhupada talks about how real atonement, right, which means the atonement that actually changes your character, that actually frees you from sin by the grace of Krishna, is coming to real knowledge. That's why, oh, sorry for the children who are crying. But you often hear the Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya, right? That the spiritual master is by knowledge, by transcendental knowledge, we destroy ignorance, correct? So, but this knowledge in bhakti, it's interesting. It's not just theoretical knowledge. It's knowledge that is attained by the grace of Krishna in reciprocation with our efforts, with our sincerity. And that's why Prabhupada talks about a standard process. So please go on.
one can such a methodical life is described as tapasya. One can be gradually elevated to the standard of real knowledge or Krishna consciousness by practicing austerity and celibacy, brahmacharya, by controlling the mind, by controlling the senses, by giving up one's possessions in charity, by being avoidly truthful, be keeping clean, and by practicing yoga, uh, asanas, asanas. However, if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a pure devotee, he can easily surpass all the practices for the controlling the mind yoga, uh, by the mystic yoga process simply by following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, refraining from illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and by engaging in the service of Supreme Lord under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master. This easy process is being recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami.
So Prabhupada, thank you, Naina. So Prabhupada is condensing everything for us here and is saying, look, ultimately, if you just follow the four regulative principles and you engage in practical devotional service, which begins with the tongue, which begins with chanting Hare Krishna, and therefore we chant our rounds every day, and we read the Bhagavatam, mainly Shravanam Kirtanam, and if we can do a little puja also to, some Shalaground Shila or our home deities and offer boga to Radha and Krishna and so on. Great. And that combination of following the four regulative principles and engaging in actual practical bhakti yoga, which revolves mainly around Shravanam Kirtanam, then that activity itself will basically bring us to real knowledge, will free us from from the sinful reactions of our lives, and will reawaken our love for Krishna, which is the greatest benediction. So now Prabhupada is going to go into depth about all these 6 points that Rupa Goswami, spoke to us about, starting with what? With the urge to speak. Okay. So who was next to read? I forgot I mentioned. Who was it? Who is going to read next?
May I, Prabhuji?
Yeah, that's Shobha, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and who would like to read after Shobha? Roshni, you'll read after, and then Shimal, okay? So go ahead, Shobha.
All right. First one must control his speaking power. Every one of us has the power of speech. As soon as we get an opportunity, we begin to speak. If we do not speak about Krishna consciousness, we speak about all sorts of nonsense. A toad in a field speaks by croaking, and similarly, everyone who has a tongue wants to speak, even if all he has to say is nonsense. The croaking of the toad, however, simply invites the snake. Please come here and eat me. Nevertheless, although it is inviting death and Toad goes on croaking, the talking of materialistic man and impersonalist Mayavadi philosophers may be compared to the croaking of frogs. They are always speaking nonsense and thus inviting death to catch them. Controlling speech, however, does not mean self imposed silence, the external purpose of mourner, as Mayavadi philosophers think. Silence may appear helpful for some time, but ultimately it proves a failure. The meaning of
Yes.
control.
So
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but why does it prove a failure? And this is an interesting question because it has to do with our very nature, our very constitution, how we as humans and as souls are actually designed by the Creator. Why is it that stopping talking altogether is, as Prabhupada says, is impractical?
Prabhuji, it's
Anyone?
like we can stop talking, but the noise of mind we cannot stop. So it is useless if we are just stop talking, and we cannot like silence our mind. So it is useless, I think so.
Good point. Good point. The mind is always going to move. So what does it mean though? Like the fact that our mind is dynamic by nature, what does it tell us about who we are? Going once, going twice. It tells us that we as souls are dynamic persons who naturally speak, who naturally engage in dialogue, who naturally engage in action. When we look at the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, or what's described that happens in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world, the pure devotees over there with Krishna, they're not silent. They're laughing with Krishna. They're playing jokes with Krishna. They're they're glorifying Krishna, or they're getting angry with Krishna. Right? They glorify Krishna. So in other words, the soul, the Atma, who we are, we're always active by nature. And therefore, to try to impose some sort of artificial restriction of the senses upon ourselves goes against our very nature. It goes against our nature as active spiritual beings. You get my point? That's why we are against like Buddhist practice of, or Zen Buddhist practice of sitting, or even the Hindu Mayavadis, who go to some cave or Himalayas and who sit there in total silence for years or whatever. Like Prabhupada said at the very beginning here, we engage in Krishna Katha. He's going to actually say it in the next sentence. So please go on, read. Sorry to interrupt you.
The meaning of controlled speech conveyed by Sri Rupa Goswami advocates the positive process of Krishna Katha, engaging the speaking process in glorifying the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. The tongue can thus glorify the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. The preacher of Krishna Katha is always beyond the clutches of death. This is the significance of controlling the urge to speak.
This is one of my favorite statements of Prabhupada in all of his corpus of statements. This sentence is just brilliant. The preacher of Krishna Katha is always beyond the clutches of death. So if we spend our lives, in Krishna consciousness, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, maybe telling others about Krishna, telling our children about Krishna, then we're beyond death. And what does it mean to be beyond death? Anyone? What does it mean to be beyond death?
Beyond mean backside?
Come again?
Backside?
Can you say that again?
Prabhuji, free from the fruit of the work.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. Freed from the what of the world?
Free from the fruit of the work that we are doing.
The fruit?
Yes.
Of karma.
Yeah, free from the fruit, from the
maybe
karma.
we would be liberated.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Liberation. We're liberated. We're liberated in this very body also. Even though, of course, we still have to grow old and by Krishna's wish, we're going to have some sort of disease or some sort of, our regular life, but technically speaking, we're liberated. And then when our body ultimately dies, no more taking birth. Please go on.
The restlessness or fickleness of the mind, Manovega, is controlled when one can fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 22.31 says, Krishna Shurya Shama Maya Haya Andhakara Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Maya Adhikara. Krishna is just like the sun, and Maya is just like the darkness. If the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Similarly, if Krishna is present in the mind, there is no possibility of the minds being agitated by Maya's influence. The yogic process of...
Sorry, but isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
So poetic, huh? Krishna is just like the sun and Maya is just like darkness. If the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. So similarly, if we're thinking of Krishna, then Maya can't be there. Please go on.
The yogic process of negating all material thoughts will not help. To try to create a vacuum in the mind is artificial. The vacuum will not remain. However, if one always thinks of Krishna and how to serve Krishna best, one's mind will naturally be controlled.
So what is a vacuum?
Hollow flask?
What did you say?
Hollow flask?
A hollow flask? Yeah. Anybody else want to just give the definition of this term?
Which catches the all.
A vacuum is what you use to clean your house.
Clean your house.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
No.
What? Prabhuji, I have a question. According this,
Prabhupada is telling us that you should not become engineers and make vacuum cleaners. No, I'm joking. So what is the word vacuum meaning here?
Try to empty our mind.
Yes, empty, exactly. So the idea to empty the mind and to kind of like what Bimal Prasad Prabhu was talking about yesterday. Remember, he was joking about these men, these sort of Mayavadi pious people who come in front of the murti on the altar and then they close their eyes, right? Because they refuse to believe that God is a person and that God has a form and that his form is not just material, it's actually Satchidananda. It's a Satchidananda Vigraha. And similarly, Krishna's name is not Maya, is not illusion. Krishna's name is absolute and is eternal. And so, and in this way, everything, that's why it says, what is it? Atakshi Krishna Nam Adi, like Nam Adi, everything related to Krishna, Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's personality, all those things we believe are eternal and they're transcendental. They're not material. They're not illusion. But the Mayavadis, they believe that it's Maya. And so therefore better, since Krishna is Maya for them, right? Or the Buddhists also will say Krishna, I mean, everything is illusion. It's even worse than the Mayavadis. At least the Mayavadis, they believe that, okay, there is Brahman, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mitya. And Krishna is part of the Jagat. Krishna is Mitya. All this, we believe, nonsense speculation. So because they believe that, Jagat Mitya and Krishna is also Mitya, therefore you should close your eyes when you see the Murti of Krishna. And therefore it doesn't matter if you chant Krishna's name or Ganesha's name or Mahatma Gandhi's name or whoever's name, Taylor Swift's name, because ultimately they're all Jagat, they're all material. But the devotee says, no. There's a big difference. Krishna's name, Krishna's form, accept Krishna's teachings, Krishna's lila. Those things are transcendental. Divyam. What is that verse from the Gita, chapter 4, verse 9? Janma karma chame divyam. Exactly. Well said. Janma karma chame divyam. So because we believe that Krishna's lila and karma and teachings are divyam, we chant Krishna's name and we don't therefore stay quiet. Because since we believe that Krishna's name is transcendental, then if we believe that chanting Krishna's name is actually beneficial. It's an absolute activity. It's a transcendental activity. So please continue. Now, who wants to read next?
Prabhuji, I have something to say.
Yes, please go ahead.
Prabhuji, as we are learning here that we should continue engage our senses in Krishna and to serve Krishna, we should always think about that. But sometimes in our practical life, when it is happening, like we are surrounded by those people, those family members who are not want to talk about Krishna, they are just sitting and gossiping or just joking and whatever. So if we are not participating in it is inappropriate for them. So what should we do if we are leaving the room and going somewhere else in the house? So it is also not good. So and this is the association, and this is the association of those people who are not in the Krishna consciousness. So what to do then?
You have to use your discrimination, and you have to be flexible. I'm just putting myself here for a while because there's some people there. You have to be flexible. You have to, and always remember, what if I do this or that, how will it affect their opinion of Prabhupada and of Krishna consciousness, right? When you become a Vaishnava or a Vaishnavi, you live your whole life, you live for others. You live for others, and you live by your example. Like, people are more attracted and influenced by your example than by what you preach. I don't know if you've heard, in the Catholic tradition, there was a saint called Saint Francis of Assisi, who was in Italy. And he said something very beautiful. He said, you should preach your whole life. And sometimes, when necessary, you should speak. Isn't that nice? You should preach your whole life, and occasionally, when necessary, you should open your mouth and you should speak. In other words, preaching by one's example is what really convinces others. I mean, look at Prabhupada. He was so pure that just in his presence, people melted, right? So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because sometimes in the neophyte stage of our spiritual life, of course, we should always think we are neophytes, but sometimes in our inexperienced stage, in the name of trying to please Krishna, in the name of trying to be, perfect devotees, we may act in ways that are actually unnecessarily giving a bad impression about Krishna to others. And that is very bad, because if you're slowing down somebody's progress to Krishna by your bad behavior, then that is actually violent. We could say that's actually violent. You're hurting their spiritual life. And that's a definition that Prabhupada gives about violence. So, of course, Prabhupada talked about, catching a fish without getting wet, there's the analogy of a flower, a lotus flower that is in the water, but that is not, touched by water. So the fundamental principles, like, where you really have to say, no, I'm sorry, with all due respect for you, I'm not going to, and these are the 4 regulative principles. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have sex outside of marriage. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take intoxicant. And that means, cigarette drinking. I mean, I'm not encouraging you to eat onions or garlic, not at all. But for example, there's this amazing story where, and this is a factual story, Prabhupada it's in the Lilamrita. Prabhupada was invited at some life member's home in Bombay or wherever, and they were taking prasadam, and some of his disciples were with him, and one of the disciples noticed that there was onion in the sabji, and the devotee said, Prabhupada, there's onion in the sabji. And Prabhupada said, no, there's no onion in the sabji, because the guest was there. And no, Prabhupada, there's onion in the sabji. And Prabhupada said, there's no onion in the sabji. And then apparently, from what I heard also, he took even more of that sabji to make his host feel comfortable. When Harikesh Swami, ex-Swami, he fell down from sannyas, but he was a wonderful disciple of Prabhupada who did so much service for Prabhupada in Russia. He was one of the first American disciples of Prabhupada that Prabhupada sent to Russia. And remember, this is Russia in 1970s, behind the Iron Curtain, extreme, dark, atheistic police state, where you could get killed just by preaching any type of religion. And Harikesh famously said to Prabhupada, maybe I won't be able to eat anything vegetarian there. And Prabhupada said, so eat meat. And then famously Harikesh said, but what about my consciousness? And Prabhupada said famously, to hell with your consciousness. So Prabhupada was willing to, if necessary, in an extreme case, was willing that his disciple eat meat if there's nothing else to eat meat, but preaching was more important, to give Krishna to others, even if he has to sacrifice his so-called perfect consciousness by, degrading it because you eat meat. If you're going to go and help people come to Krishna and you have no choice, then damn it, eat meat. I don't care, Even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, where he served meat, or he served cigarettes at least, to Britishers who came to visit him in Calcutta, just to make them comfortable. So again, I'm not saying that you should break the regulative principles. Those you stand very strictly, you're very loyal to that. And if someone makes fun of you, oh, you see, you don't want to eat meat, oh, you're whatever, you're stupid, or you don't want to, have a sexual relationship with me before marriage, oh, you're terrible, or oh, you don't want to take intoxication, you're a loser. Sorry, those are my principles. I will not compromise with them ever, under any circumstance. But if it means, playing the game and like laughing at their joke, or, going along and maybe watching some, movie with them, just so they can feel that you love them, that you're part of their family, and that in the end, they actually think highly of you, and therefore they think highly of Krishna because you're representing Krishna, and therefore their journey to Krishna will be even faster, then that is to your credit, right? So you should keep this in mind when taking these sort of decisions in different circumstances. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Check. So where are we? We are at similarly, anger can be controlled, right? Who wishes to read?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Similarly, anger can be controlled. We cannot stop anger altogether, but if we simply become angry with those who blaspheme the Lord or the devotees of the Lord, we control our anger in Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became angry with the miscreant brothers Jagai and Madhai who blasphemed and struck Nityananda Prabhu. In his Shiksha Ashtaka, Lord Chaitanya wrote, Tranat api shunichena taror api sahishnuna. One should be humbler than the grass and more tolerant than the tree. One may then ask why the Lord exhibited his anger. The point is that one should be ready to tolerate all insults to one's own self, but when Krishna or his pure devotee is blasphemed, a genuine devotee becomes angry and acts like fire against the offenders. Krodha, anger cannot be stopped, but it can be applied rightly. It was in anger that Hanuman set fire to Lanka, but he is worshipped as the greatest devotee of the Lord Ramchandra. This means that he utilized his anger in the right way. Arjuna serves as another example. He was not willing to fight, but Krishna incited his anger. You must fight. To fight without anger is not possible. Anger is controlled, however, when utilized in the service of the Lord.
So thank you, Roshni. Anyone in this group know a very, 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 very important term, a concept, which was coined by Rupa Goswami himself, which illustrates this example that Prabhupada gives. So far, what is Prabhupada telling us? He's telling us that one's tongue, one's mind, one's speech should be engaged in Krishna service, correct? So technically speaking, what is this very, very famous term that Rupa Goswami coined and which really is at the backbone of the whole Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya? It starts with Y. It's yuk. Yuk. Anyone? Two
Yukta
words.
Vairagya.
Yes. Who said that? Jaya? Jaya Tulsi. You said it, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes. So you get the Mahaprasadam Burfi. Yukta Vairagya. Who may, you could say out loud, who is not familiar with the concept of Yukta Vairagya? Is everyone familiar with Yukta Vairagya? If everyone is familiar, no. Shobha and Neha and no. Bharka, no. And who else is not? Mehak, not. Okay, you're honest. What does Bina also said knows? What does Vairagya mean?
Renunciation.
What is it? Renunciation.
Renunciation.
So everyone knows what renunciation means, right? You say no to something. I renounce my, I don't know, I renounce my wife, I renounce my husband, I renounce my passport, I renounce my kingdom. You know, when Ramachandra goes to the forest, he renounces his kingdom. I renounce my inheritance, whatever. You know, you renounce. Now, for Vaishnavas, unlike, again, the Mayavadis, we have two kinds of renunciation, or we believe there's two kinds of renunciation. One is not so good, it's incomplete, and the other is perfect renunciation. Jatin ji, can you maybe explain the difference between what we call Yukta Vairagya and Falgu Vairagya? Are you in the library again? Okay, he's in the library. Anyone who can speak freely describe to us the difference between Yukta Vairagya, which we say, you know, is the right kind of Vairagya, and Falgu Vairagya, which means false renunciation. Falgu means false, which is the, you know, the bad type of renunciation. Anyone can explain? Because this is really, really important to know.
Prabhuji, may I try?
Yes, who's speaking?
Jai Tulsi Devidasi.
Okay, go for it.
Prabhuji, Yukta Vairagya, that detachment which is favorable for our Krishna consciousness, like for serving Krishna, and for Falgu Vairagya is something we are doing for ourselves, but at the name of Krishna. This is like Falgu Vairagya.
No,
Somewhat like that.
sorry, ma'am. This is very good, but a better answer can be had. Especially the first part, if I may humbly say, it can be improved. I mean, you got the gist. You got the gist, but more precisely, it's you have to be a little more nuanced here. You said, if I'm not correct, the first one is, Yukta Vairagya is renouncing things that are favorable to Krishna, correct?
Yes, like using everything
there we
in
go.
Krishna consciousness. Like
There we
a
go.
famous example we get, like Prabhupada ji used dictaphone, which was material
Okay.
completely, but in the
Okay.
service of Krishna.
So now
So
you got it
using-
perfectly. Now
so
you got it perfectly. Now you got the definition perfectly. You see, it's not about renouncing, saying no, Of course, we renounce meat eating, we renounce illicit sex, we renounce gambling, and we renounce intoxication. Yes. But aside from that, we don't renounce anything, actually. We, as you said it very nicely the second time around, we engage everything in Krishna's service. And interestingly enough, for us Vaishnavas, for us Rupanugas, engaging things, literally material things and persons in Krishna's service is actually renunciation. Isn't it incredible? Spending, 1 crore rupees to, I don't know, build a school for Vaishnava children, or to create a temple, or to sponsor, 5 lakh or whatever, 50 lakh copies of Bhagavad Gita to give for free around the world. That money, which is so-called material, when engaged in Krishna service, is actually an act of renunciation. Isn't it amazing? And now, maybe since you have the mic, Jaya, can you contrast that with Falgu Vairagya, with false renunciation?
false renunciation, like rejecting everything in the name of Krishna and not utilizing, like
Exactly. Like, I'll tell you, if you heard of Hridayananda Maharaj, I think Krishna Priya mentioned him. He's one of my dear gurus. And he tells a very fascinating story, that once he was with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was being criticized by his godbrothers for flying around the world in airplanes. And Prabhupada said something very interesting to Hridayananda Maharaj one day. And he made a comment. He said, "Should I be such a fool and walk barefoot like Lord Chaitanya?" He said, "Should I be such a fool and imitate Lord Chaitanya and walk barefoot like him?" Because, as you rightly said, maybe, not maybe, 500 years ago, there were no jumbo planes. There was no, there were no jet engines or planes you could fly from from Karachi to Delhi. But now that there are, and if you're going to go from Karachi to Delhi, or Delhi to Karachi, to preach Krishna consciousness, then to say, no, I will not take the plane. No, it is material and I'm a spiritual person. No, I will use, that's being a fool. That's being false renunciate. I'll give you an example in my personal life, and maybe Bimal Prasad Prabhu told you about it. And we talk about this a lot in the Krishna West project. I'm of the opinion, and many Western devotees are of the opinion, that Western clothes, so, Western clothes means a shirt, a pant, like a gentleman, a sports jacket, and so on, are not Maya. They're not bad in themselves. And on the contrary, especially if you're a grihasta, if you're a sannyasi, okay, you have your saffron uniform because you've renounced the world anyway, But if you're in the world, a grihasta, a student, or married, or with a job or career, or a preacher, to say, no, I will not wear Western clothes in the West, especially because it is better to wear dhoti, kurta, sari, and that is more spiritual. I will say that's Falgu Vairagya. That's false renunciation, because you could actually be using a kind of clothes, of course, keeping it clean and modest, and just like in India or in Hindu culture, you can wear a sari in a most inappropriate way, right? And you can wear a sari in the most appropriate way. So similarly, in the West, you can wear, a mini skirt in the most inappropriate way, or, wear a beautiful Western dress, and that is very elegant and also very appropriate. So in either, and it's not that, anything Indian is great, anything Western is bad. It's how you use something. So to refuse to use, for example, nice, clean, sattvic Western clothes, so that people that you preach to can feel more comfortable with you because they can relate to you, at the very basic fundamental level of how you dress and how you present yourself, and then they can listen to the message of Krishna more, with a more relaxed and trusting attitude. To renounce that is Falgu Vairagya. It's false renunciation, right? So coming back to our nectar of instruction here, Prabhupada says that anger is generally bad, but in extreme cases where you have to defend a Vaishnava, then anger should be used in Krishna service. And what two examples does Prabhupada use? We just read it. Can someone remember?
Hanuman, Krishna.
Yes,
Hanuman and
Hanuman.
Arjuna.
Exactly, Hanuman and Arjuna. Hanuman, was super angry because he was doing his anger in Ramachandra's service to save Sita, to uphold Sita's dignity and to be the servant, the glorious servant of Ramachandra, right? And Arjuna also, he fought because Krishna told him, right? Very good. So now remember this, huh? The Yukta Vairagya principle. So why don't we take a break for 5 minutes? We can, drink and use freshen up, and then we can join again in between 5 and 10 minutes, and then we'll continue reading about Prashadam and the rest of text 1. Okay? Keshava gave his thumbs up, so good. So we'll meet in 5 minutes. Okay. We can slowly come back to our whatever. Okay, so perhaps Neha, you found that funny? Come out of our Tamaguna. Speaking for myself. So let's go with food now, with the urge of the tongue. Who would like to read? Who hasn't read yet? Mehak, have you read already today?
No.
Okay, and if you're ready, and is everyone basically with us? Everyone's there. And Hitika, you'd like to read too, right? Or is your hand raised from before? Malika's hand is also up. Neha's hand. Huh? Anyway, we have Mehak now, and please do us the honor of reading top of the page. As for the urge of the tongue.
Hare Krishna. As for the urge of the tongue, we all experience that the tongue wants to eat palatable dishes. Generally, we should not allow the tongue to eat according to its choice, but should control the tongue by supplying prasada. The devotee's attitude is that he will eat only when Krishna gave him prasad.
I have to tell you a funny. I think it's funny. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mehak, but I remember when I just became a devotee. I was brand new, 20 years old, didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, and so we were told, that traditionally in the Gurukul, unless the guru called that you go eat, you fast. And so I had read that, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this very strictly, and so we were three new devotees living in the men's ashram for the new ashram bhakta program, training program. And after, like, at 6 p.m. or something, or 4:30 p.m., there was the afternoon offering, which was always some very nice little cake or some nice sweet preparation. And I remember, for the first few days, that the bhakta leader would tell us, okay, now come take prasad, and then I guess he assumed that we would do this automatically. So when one day he didn't come and he didn't call us, so the other two devotees were like, okay, it's 4:30, let's go, have prasadam, let's go eat and I was like, no, I'm staying here. And they're like, huh, why? He's like, because scripture says that unless the spiritual master calls you, the disciple should fast. And then one of them said, you're an idiot. And they left and went to take prasadam, and they were right. So, I say this because Prabhupada says here, right, the devotee's attitude is that he will eat only when Krishna gives him prasad. Please go on, Neha, go on.
That is the way to control the urge of the tongue. One should take prasada at scheduled time and should not eat in restaurants or sweet meat or
I have to interrupt you again here, but you'll find this interesting. I think, I'm initiated by Bhakti Charu Swami, and he tells the story how when he was serving Prabhupada in Mayapur in 1970, late 76, 1977, he had found some essays that Prabhupada had written before coming to America that he published, with the Gaudiya Math. And so he had told Prabhupada, I found all these writings of yours, so why don't I get it printed as a book? And Prabhupada had said yes. So he was doing some round trips to Kolkata from Mayapur. And then he says that when he would go to Kolkata, he was already, Prabhupada had given him sannyas, he couldn't control himself, and he would go to sweetmeat shops and he would eat. It's innocent. Okay, maybe it's not cooked by a devotee, but it's milk. After all, milk is very pure, and it's not like he was going to eat meat or smoke some cigarette. He was just he felt really guilty. So one day he said, Prabhupada, I have to confess. And Prabhupada asked him, what is it? And he said, I have to confess, I can't control my tongue when I go to Kolkata. to see how the printing of your books is. I can't resist. I go to a sweet shop and and eat sweets. And Prabhupada in this instance was very kind. He said, that is also prasadam. That is also prasadam. And then he said something interesting. He said, actually in Kali Yuga, it is impossible to maintain the purity of food. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has given the holy name. I'll repeat this because it's really interesting. Prabhupada said, in Kali Yuga, it is impossible to maintain the purity of food. In other words, forget it. Try to find some absolutely pure food. Forget it. Kali Yuga is so contaminated. And then he added, and therefore, because it's impossible to keep the purity of food in Kali Yuga, because of that, Lord Chaitanya gave the holy name. Interesting, huh? So please go on, Mehak.
If we stick on to the principle of taking only prasada, the urge of the belly and tongue can be controlled. In similar manner, the urge of the genitals, the sex impulse, can be controlled
That
when
was
not used.
that was two paragraphs, but every one of us will give you a pass and you can read it. You got 2 paragraphs for the price of 1. But granted, it's a small paragraph, so all of us will be very merciful to you and say, okay, you can continue reading the second paragraph. Go ahead.
In a similar manner, the urge of the genitals, the sex impulse, can be controlled when not used unnecessarily. The genitals should be used to beget a Krishna conscious child, otherwise they should not be used. The Krishna consciousness movement encouraged marriage not for the satisfaction of the genitals, but for the begetting of Krishna conscious child. As soon as the child are little grown up, they are sent to our Guru Loka school in Dallas, Texas, where they are trained to become fully Krishna conscious devotees. Many such Krishna conscious child are required, and one who is capable of bringing forth Krishna consciousness of spring is allowed to utilize his genitals.
Yes, good point. So there's a couple of things that can be said here. First of all, the Gurukul. Prabhupada had a big hope in the Gurukul system. The first generation, Gurukuls were not the greatest success. There's a big attrition rate. Like a lot of the children who went to our ISKCON Gurukuls didn't keep their Krishna, left Krishna consciousness when they became adults. That's just a historical fact. So, and there's scandals about child abuse in ISKCON Gurukuls, and it's still there. So that's the first point. But I'll tell you something funny. You know how teenagers are teenagers, right? When you're 13 or 14, you're a teenager, and so anything you speak about sexuality, it's like, you're a teenager, right? So I'm not saying this is something you should do if you're distributing books, but there was one devotee, he would distribute nectar of instructions. He would sell nectar of instructions in front of the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, there's a very large plaza, a park sort of in the center of the city, where there's the Smithsonian Institute. There's all these very important buildings, including the Air and Space Museum. And it's just a tradition that in America, school children, so middle schoolers, so maybe 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, they once a year or whatever, they go on a school trip, and they may come from far away, from Pennsylvania or from Arizona or from who knows, from Florida, and they drive, or even maybe they fly. They take a school trip to the capital, to Washington, D.C., and they always stop at the Air and Space Museum. So it so happened that there's always these buses full of young kids, these teenagers who come to the Air and Space Museum. And so this devotee would stand there, as all these, young teenagers would arrive, and he would call them over. Hey guys, look, I've got something to show you. So, a whole group of, 20 or 30 eager, young, innocent teenagers would show up, and he would say, look, this book teaches you how to control your genitals. To control your genitals. And so you'd have all these kids like, cool, okay, I'll buy one. So that was his mantra to get these, totally innocent American kids who know nothing about Vaishnavism. So, to give a donation to have Rupa Goswami's Sangha and Prabhupada's Sangha by being told that this is a book that will teach them how to control their genitals. Yeah, I find it very innocent. It's humorous. It's humorous. Okay, so yes, the point is again, yukta vairagya, right? Yukta vairagya. We don't say no, don't use your, don't have sex, don't use your genitals. But in Krishna consciousness, we say, have sex within marriage. Have sex within marriage. That is according to dharma, right? In the highest standard, sex only for children. Okay. But Prabhupada also made it clear, and this is important to note, because some devotees wrongly think that sex within marriage, maybe not only for procreation, is somehow sinful. And we should, at least I'm of the opinion, as many devotees are, that that's incorrect. I believe that it's not the highest standard. The highest standard, let's be clear, is procreation only. But to go as far as to say that sex within marriage is sinful, is adharmic, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. And it's up to the individual couple, and it's a private affair. It's each couple's private life of how are they going to engage with that activity, how often, and so on, with the objective of with time maybe gradually slowing, having less and less, or maybe from the very beginning have only for procreation, granted. But that's something that's very private, and I think it depends on each couple's own, whatever, even psychophysical natures, but the principle though remains the same, that we engage our senses in Krishna service, and the ideal way to engage our genitals is to beget Krishna conscious children, and that's why there's this thing of Garbhadhan Samskara. I'm sure you've heard of it, right? Where both the husband and the wife, in our tradition, they would chant extra rounds, before conception, so that both the husband and wife are in an exalted state of Krishna consciousness, which would make their union as Krishna conscious as possible, which would then sort of make it very favorable to invite into their family souls who are already quite advanced or quite inclined to Krishna consciousness, right? I'll tell you a funny story in this connection. There's a disciple of Prabhupada called Adikarta, and at first you'll be shocked by this story, and you may say, "Oh God, why are you even mentioning his name?" But actually, there's a good ending. There's a very good ending to this story. So this devotee Adikarta, he lives in America, in North Carolina. And as you know, I don't know if you know, but in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada did prescribe that when you're a husband and wife and you want to beget a child, you should chant 50 rounds of the Maha Mantra, before engaging in sex. And as you know, 50 rounds is a very time consuming. It takes a long time, right? 2 hours for 16 rounds, so 4 hours for 32. So you're talking about 5-6 hours of chanting, and for some of us, we experience great pleasure in chanting, but for many of us, it's a tapasya. It's long. So I'll always remember, I was at his house. He lived in the countryside in a farm community called Prabhupada Village, sort of like countryside America, where there's like cowboys still, kind of Mississippi style, with the cowboy style, that you've seen on TV, with a sort of a southern accent, and the sheriff, kind of like the old America. So on a Sunday morning, he gets a call, and he picks up the phone, and he says, "Oh yes, hello, Sheriff Johnson." So the sheriff of the town was calling him. So he's like, I'm sitting there and he's like, yes. Oh my God, really? Serious again? Oh God, Sheriff, I'm so sorry. God, so frustrating. Okay, I'll be right there. I'll go pick him up. And he looked really distraught. So I accompanied him to his car. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, it's my son, my son Keshava. So at that time, Keshava was maybe 17 or 18 years old. Just a late teenager, an older teenager. And I said, what happened? He said, last night he went out with his friends. They got drunk. And so he ended up in the local jail, and he spent the night in the jail, in the police station. And I have to go and pick him up. And this happens all the time. It happens all the time. And I'll always remember he got into his car and he looked so frustrated. And as he closed the door, he said, I chanted 50 rounds for this kid. I chanted 50 rounds for this kid. I can't believe it. And he closed the door and he went to pick up his son from the from the police station. In other words, like, damn it, I spent 5-6 hours chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, and just see my son, is a derelict who ends up in the sheriff's office getting drunk every night. So what's the use of chanting 50 rounds? It's nonsense. I chanted 50 rounds for this kid. The good news, though, is that you see, after a few years, he straightened up, and now he's a Paka householder. He lives in Alachua. He has a nice career. He has 2 children. He goes to Mangal Arctic every morning. He chants 16 rounds. So I guess it was one of those time bombs. The effect of the parents, Krishna consciousness rubbed off on him. Maybe after a few years, maybe he had to do some little bit of nonsense here and there before straightening up. So yeah, so back to the point, Yukta Vairagya, we are not against family. On the contrary, even Bhaktisiddhanta never had sex in his whole life. Bhaktisiddhanta, was the strictest definition of brahmachari. The men who are here, what I'm talking about, like the utmost strictness of brahmacharya, right? Who never had any type of he said, I would have thousands of children if they were all to become devotees of Krishna, right? So most of you are Vaishnavis, so good chances most of you will be married, and happily so, in Krishna consciousness, we pray. And you, of course, you have your careers and everything, but when it comes to your family and your children, you should pray that you could be Krishna conscious, and that Krishna sends you some nice kids that you can take the responsibility to serve by your own example, so that they can become Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis after they're born. So that's very important. So again, Yukta Vairagya, we don't reject anything. We don't say no, marriage is bad. You should not use your genitals at all. Everyone should be a brahmachari or sannyasi. No, on the contrary, just keep it in Krishna consciousness. Keep it in Krishna consciousness. Don't have illicit sex, and therefore we recommend marriage. Hopefully those marriages can work out. Okay. Who else would like to read or add anything, or who has not read yet? Kishore, you read already? Aishwarya, you raised your hand? Oh no, it's Simal. Weren't you supposed to read? Yeah, I think you have to unmute yourself. And I don't know if Aishwarya wants to read also. Zoom is kind of difficult when there's a lot of people, but are you ready to read, Simal?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so go ahead.
When one is fully practiced in the methods of Krishna conscious control, he can become qualified to be a bona fide spiritual master. In his Anuvarti explanation of Updesh Samrita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes that our material identification creates 3 kinds of urges: the urge to speak, the urge to demand of the mind, and the demands of the body. When a living entity falls victim to these three types of urges, his life becomes inauspicious. One who practices resisting these demands of or urges is called tapasvi, or one who practices austerities. By such tapasya, one can overcome victimized by the material energy.
Can you say that again? The victimization.
Victimization by the material energy, the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So very good. What does victimization mean? If you don't know, it's okay. Do you know what victim? You know what the word victim is, right? A victim.
Yes.
Yes. What is a victim? What is a victim, Simal?
Victim, can I explain?
One who commits a sin or any wrongdoings.
No. Someone who commits the sin is the one who inflicts pain, and the victim is the one who receives. So, for example, a victim of rape, women get raped. So when a woman is raped, then she's a victim of rape. Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated last week, he was a victim. He was assassinated, right? One who is being targeted. Sundar Kumar says, yes, very good. So victimization means the process of becoming a victim, you see. So what Prabhupada is telling us here, and this is very important, that when we break the regulative principles, when we have illicit sex, or when we gamble, or when we eat meat, or when we take intoxication, we become victimized by who? By Maya. We become victims of Maya. And our life, as Prabhupada says, becomes inauspicious. So we have to really pray to be strict with these four regulative principles. It's very important. Okay, who's our next speaker? And of course, if you have any questions or comments, keep them coming. But unless we just continue reading, who wants to read? Who hasn't read yet? I don't know if Aishwarya, were you raising your hand, like physically? Because anyone else? Doshna didn't read. Also, you have your digital hand. But Aishwarya, you're muted, so we can't see you. Hitika is both raising her hand and digital hand, so maybe she can read.
May I read?
Okay, you can read, and then Hitika will read next because she was too slow in unmuting herself. So Doshna, Hitika, and then Aishwarya, I don't know. We have to figure out whether you raised your hand or you were just scratching your ear. We can't figure that out. So go ahead, Doshna.
Hare Krishna. When we refer to the urge to speak, we refer to useless talking such as that of impersonal Mayavadi philosophers or of persons engaged in fruitive activities technically called karma kanda, or of materialistic people who simply want to enjoy life without restriction. All such talks or literatures are practical exhibition of the urge to speak. Many people are talking nonsensically and writing volumes of useless books, and all this is the result of urge to speak. To counteract this tendency, we have
Sorry to interrupt you, Doshna, but social media. Who's on Instagram? Raise your hand if you're all on Instagram.
Everyone.
Okay. Raise your hand if you're on TikTok. Is TikTok allowed in Pakistan? Really, huh?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
It's a Muslim country,
Prabhuji.
and yet India doesn't allow, but Pakistan allows. Okay. So, and who's on Facebook? Raise your hand. So basically, so now, can we have Krishna conscious content on Instagram and TikTok? Yes, right?
Yeah.
And is that Yukta Vairagya actually? It's Yukta Vairagya. But let's be honest. 99% probably of what's on TikTok and Instagram, is it God conscious? No, it's nonsense, isn't it? It's total, I mean, some of it's very entertaining. I'm not, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna be like, you should never go on TikTok. You should never watch, but if all the reels you watch have nothing to do with Krishna, all of them, and you spend, whatever, 2, 3 hours a day on TikTok and on Instagram, and you're consuming content that is not related to God, that is not related to bhakti, then you're consuming stuff that's not going to make you happy. It's going to make you restless, and you're in a way you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time because your life is, primarily exclusively meant for devotion to God, So it's, those platforms are super addictive, and there's a lot of bad stuff on that too, especially TikTok. There's so many very, very almost pornographic stuff, that give a really bad example to women and men also to follow, that you have to whatever show your bodies and be like real just immodest and whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So I would say, be careful when you're consuming social media content, and make sure, you subscribe to channels that, have Krishna conscious content. So like whatever, pictures of deities. Like I'm subscribed to the, the Radha Govinda deities in Jaipur, and the Mayapur deities and ISKCON Vrindavan and ISKCON New Mayapur. And so, as I scroll, I try to avoid, the ads, and because it's very, it's very expertly done to catch your attention. So if you use Instagram and TikTok and Facebook to consume only Krishna conscious content and post Krishna conscious content, then great. And great. Then you're doing Krishna Katha. You're using modern technology in Krishna service. You're hearing and chanting about Krishna through TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And that's fantastic. But if, as the guys who made up those apps want you to do, if you slip and then you go off on a tangent and you realize 3 hours later is holy crap, I just consumed all sorts of nonsense for the last 2 hours, that has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, then you have to ask yourself, is Krishna really pleased? Did you use that time in the most productive way, and how much is that going to affect your consciousness? Like I'll remember, I'll tell you a story, a personal anecdote. One of my gurus also, Shiksha Guru, his name is Brigupati Prabhu. He's a Prabhupada disciple who lives in Los Angeles still. I personally love to watch American football. Okay, I know you guys especially, but many women also, you love, what's it called? You love cricket. I wonder actually, as Hindus or Vaishnavas from Pakistan, do you root for Pakistan or do you root for India when Pakistan is playing India? You root for Pakistan.
It's Pakistan.
We vote for Virat Kohli, not India, not Pakistan, just Virat Kohli.
Prabhuji,
Okay.
depends who is winning. We vote for Pakistan.
Okay, so I love American football. Like American football, the guys with the helmets and everything. And once a year, there's the biggest television program of the entire year by far. Like every second of commercial space while the Super Bowl. It's called the Super Bowl. It's like the final game. The best of the National League and the best of there's two leagues, and then finally they meet for the Super Bowl. And there's a halftime show where Justin Timberlake or Justin Bieber or the biggest musicians come and do their halftime show, and it's televised all over the world. And so the people pay, like commercial companies pay literally like millions of dollars just for 1 second of commercial time. So the whole country of America just stops during Super Bowl Sunday, and everyone is glued to their television screen, with potato chips and Coca-Cola, and many of them, of course, with their meat, barbecue, and beers, and so on. Why am I saying this? Because I love to watch American football, and the Super Bowl is very tempting to watch, and when everybody, including many devotees, are watching the Super Bowl, it's like, no, I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna today. I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl. It's hard, So I remember once I I asked Brigupati Prabhu, who's very staunch, like he's a grihasta, he's a very nice devotee, he has 2 children who are grown up. Unfortunately, they didn't, one child, one son, and he didn't become a devotee. But anyway, but he's very strict, he'll never go on YouTube and watch anything except maybe like, his sense gratification on social media is like documentaries on children who remember their past lives. That's as far as it goes for him. So I thought, okay, I'll ask him for advice. I said, Prabhu, I really want to watch the Super Bowl tomorrow. Do you really think it's that bad? And he was like, yeah, of course it's bad. And then I'll always remember that he said, imagine you take a sewage pipe, like the sewage pipe, like where all the excrements, sewage. And imagine you take a, it's very graphic. Imagine you take a sewage pipe and you put it in your mouth and you just drink that for 2 hours. And then he said, and not only that experience is bad, but then you have the experience of having to digest all of that. You have to digest all of that. So it's like, not only are you ingurgitating all this sewage, but then you have to digest it. So in a similar way, when we go on social media and we consume, non-devotional content, it's kind of like that. And then you have to digest it. That's the point. Then, it has an effect on your consciousness. And so, after a few hours of just watching useless stuff on social media, you're more irritable, you're more depressed, you're more, you have less confidence in yourself because you've been comparing yourself to all these, Photoshop pictures of other women or so-called so much more beautiful than you, or so much more successful, blah, blah, blah. And you feel an anxiety and all that. So you have to digest all that nonsense too. So anyway, enough speaking on this point, but it's worth mentioning because Rupa Goswami is telling us here, the real use of our hearing and chanting is to speak and to hear stuff that are related to Krishna. Okay, who's next? Did we figure out whether Aishwarya was scratching her ear or whether she wanted to read? We have Hitika also. I hope I'm not offending you, Aishwarya. Just we don't know. You're silent. So, but Hitika wants to read for sure. So let her read, and then afterwards, whoever else will read is
Hare
welcome.
Krishna, Prabhuji, I have question.
Yeah, question.
Okay. Prabhuji, as you mentioned that on Instagram, on social media site, we are consuming like the things which are not related to Krishna consciousness. So sometime the one who are not Krishna conscious, we have to know about them so we can preach them. So with this mentality is also not correct.
It's a great excuse. Fantastic, very clever.
So we have to consume it.
I mean, yeah, we shouldn't be idiots, like who's Donald Trump or who, like, yes, we have to be in touch with reality, but then you have to be sincere, you have to be sincere. I think Krishna's in your heart. He knows when you're sincere. He knows when you're overdoing it, and he knows, when you're kind of, I'm not saying you are, but all of us have a tendency to kind of, lie and to make up justifications for, no, I really have to watch 4 hours of Instagram because I really have to know, what kind of makeup Taylor Swift, wore to her, to her last concert. It's really important because if I ever have a chance to preach to her one day, I'll have to tell her that, I watched, 625 hours of her content so that she can, I'm just joking, but you get my point. So yes, you're right. At the same time, you don't want to overdo it and unnecessarily. Like, I think Prabhupada gave a nice analogy. It's a fishing analogy. So of course we don't eat fish, we don't do fishing, but to go fishing without getting wet. You want to fish without getting wet. And you are an adult, you are a sincere soul, a sincere servant of Krishna. You want to serve Krishna. So and Krishna tells you in your heart, intrinsically, okay, I'm overdoing it now. Now this is really just sense gratification, and I'm not even going to justify it. You know what I mean? So you just have to be sincere with yourself and sincere with Krishna, and pray that he guides you so that exactly when enough is enough.
Taylor Swift is a good idea to start with.
Come again?
Taylor Swift is a good start.
What is a good start?
Taylor Swift.
Oh, Taylor Swift. Taylor who? I've never heard of her, but I don't.
You say Taylor Swift, right?
No, I don't consume any social media. I don't know anything of this. I'm joking.
Okay. All right, I got your point.
So, I think we have Hitika now. You want to read? Is that okay, Daya?
Yes, Prabhuji, it is okay, but I am not sincere enough because along with that, I used to watch the thing which are not necessary in Krishna consciousness. So like sometimes we feel tired to just get relaxed. We use it as a in break
No,
and
that is justifiable, Daya. That is, and honestly, I'm speaking sincerely here. As long as it's like not completely inappropriate stuff. I mean, God forbid, okay, I'll watch pornographic content to relax. Obviously that's illicit sex, and that it's a big no-no. But Krishna does speak about recreation in the Bhagavad Gita. He does speak about recreation. So watching social media content that is maybe like, for example, humorous, that makes you laugh, some or yes, makes you relax, and it's appropriate. It's maybe not God conscious, but at least it's not adharmic. In small doses, we could, stretching the limit here, we could say that, okay, this falls in the category of recreation, again, without overdoing it. But yes, if someone feels like I'll tell you, I don't know if it's a good example, but Bimal Prasad Prabhu, Rida Nanamarjan. I remember I was on a preaching tour with him. I was accompanying him, and I'm not saying this is the best example, but we were in Sweden, and after a long 2-week intense trip of Spain, Italy, France, Germany, Belgium, programs every day, driving, and so finally we had some days off in a little house that devotees had arranged, and so he watched some black and white science fiction movie from the 1950s, that he grew up with, and he told me, he said, I have all these GBC, a lot of pressure from the GBC, and so sometimes I just watch old time science fiction movies just to relax a little bit. And I wasn't shocked. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is Maya. I was thinking, yeah, it's understandable. I mean, we are human beings, and someone may want to watch something that is decent, that is innocent, that is not adharmic, that may not be completely devotional for a short time, just to kind of, take some pressure off. Personally, I would say, okay, fine. Some others would say, no, that's Maya. The best way to relax is just to read more Bhagavad Gita. And we're not going to say no. Obviously, that if someone has that argument, what can we say? How can we say, no, that's incorrect? Of course, it's correct. But, Krishna does talk about recreation. How do we define that recreation? It's perhaps not as easy to determine. What are your thoughts, Bimal Prasad Prabhu?
That reminds me of Prabhupada watching Max Linder and Charlie Chaplin.
Good point. Great point. On the plane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
laughing.
You see Krishna there too.
Yeah. The disciples were obviously flabbergasted in the beginning, but then gradually they understood what it is. The basic idea. Yeah, basic idea was proper. I used to appreciate that Charlie Chaplin, if he makes people laugh, he makes people laugh by a kind of making fun of himself. He doesn't make people laugh by making fun of others. Prabhupada could see those things.
Yeah, Indradyumna Swami was on that plane ride. He was sitting next to him, and
he was in for a shock.
he was like, I can't believe it.
Exactly.
Prabhupada's watching Charlie Chaplin, but this is Maya, and then Prabhupada's starting to laugh, and he's like, what?
Yes.
Of course, Prabhupada also said, we can't imitate, Prabhupada, Lord, they say Lord Shiva could consume an entire ocean of poison, right? And still be unaffected. So we are much, much weaker than these great souls, So these are, different factors to consider. But the point is, the more we do here chanting about Krishna, the more we consume stuff about Krishna, the more Krishna conscious we are, the more happy we are, the more satisfied we are, the more we are doing the right thing. Right? Okay, so please, let's go on. We have 15 more minutes. I think Hitika was going to read, finally.
Hare Krishna, those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the world universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for cows. Since
Crows, not cows, crows. Crows, the black birds who eat garbage.
pilgrimage.
Go on. Since the all perfect. Go on, read on.
Since the all perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pressure there.
And then on the other hand, so these are two verses. You see, it's Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10, 1:5:10, and 1:5:11. And so the first, the author is saying, that this social media, the Instagram content that does not glorify Krishna is like garbage that only crows like to go to. Okay. But on the other hand, and now, this famous verse, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Prati Shlokam Abaddavatyapi Namanyanantasyan Yashoniktkani Yat Shrinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava. Super famous verse. On the other hand, I'll read it, please allow me. On the other hand, so what is, he's comparing to Gramya Kata. He's comparing to stuff that is only non-devotional content, right? And that place is a place of pilgrimage for crows. That is the place. So imagine, we wake up and the first thing we do, we go on Instagram or we go on TikTok, and most of the thing that shows up in our feed is non-devotional stuff. According to Bhagavatam, don't kill the messenger. And I'm preaching to myself, first of all. We're like crows. Ooh, where's the garbage? I just woke up. I'm hungry. Where's the garbage? Let's go fly to where the garbage is. That's what the Bhagavatam says, right? But on the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, pastimes of the unlimited Lord, is a different creation. Remember, we said, we believe as Vaishnavas that Krishna's name, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's teachings, Krishna's form are transcendental. They're divyam. Remember, janma karma chami divyam. It's not mundane. It's not material. So this point is being echoed here in this verse from the Bhagavatam. It's a different creation. It's just made of a different stuff, right? Bhagavatam, and therefore Krishna is a whole different ballgame. It's a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Revolution. It reminds me when I was a young devotee, I loved this verse because it was like, when you're young, you want to change the world, and you have this revolutionary spirit, and I remember I went to a Shelter concert. Vimal Prasad Prabhu. Shelter there was this rock band talking about Yukta Vairagya. You can use any type of music in Krishna's service. So there's one style of Western music called punk rock, which is like, screaming and just like super hard, very passionate, passion, mode of ignorance type of music, very loud. And there was in the 1990s a devotee band. I don't know if some of you have checked out the Wisdom of the Sages podcast. If you haven't, I recommend you type Wisdom of the Sages. And it's Raghunath Prabhu and Kostuba. And Raghunath, he's a yoga teacher now and a big podcaster, a very successful preacher, probably the most successful preacher in America. He's a wonderful grihasta. And when he was young, he was the lead singer of this punk rock band called Shelter.
Oh, was he the lead singer?
Yeah, he was the lead singer only.
God, I was just wondering, where did the band melted away? And then
No way, no way. He's like a touch. Anything he touches, he
Jai.
powered. Yeah, if you type shelter, live shelter, on YouTube, you'll recognize his face, And so,
Yes, maybe. Yes. Correct. Well, he was much younger in those days. Yes,
yeah, of course. Yeah, he didn't have that. I told him to cut off that gray beard, but he doesn't listen to me. But anyway, so I remember they were playing at the Roxy Theater. The Roxy Theater is still a very famous venue for rock music on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, next to Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, where all the big rock and roll bands, starting from the 1970s even up to today, play. Like if you played at the Roxy, you're a big star, and it used to be a 5-minute roller skating or skateboarding trip from where I used to live. So I remember when I became a devotee in Los Angeles, I was a brahmachari, and so the shelter was coming to play. So I got the permission to go with one friend of mine called Greg, who wasn't living in the ashram, but he was a devotee. He lived in Greater Los Angeles. So we went to see the shelter band, and I was dressed in saffron, shaved head, shika, and and so we came in there, and then these rock concerts, the men, some women too, but mostly the men, they start dancing like pushing each other like really hard. It can get violent. It's called the mosh pit. And I remember I was like this monk, shaven headed, saffron, almost punching guys left and right. And I remember I was screaming, "Revolution, revolution," because Shelter was singing the song. We've got the message of the Bhagavad, glorifying this verse, from Bhagavatam, that this Bhagavatam is knowledge for a revolution. So yeah, it's a different creation. So my friends, we have 10 more minutes. Somebody would like to read the next paragraph. Who do we have? Who hasn't read yet? Did Komala, did you raise your hand? Did you read already?
No, I haven't read.
Come again?
I haven't read. I want to read.
Okay, please.
From the conclusion part.
Yeah. Who's speaking right now?
I'm Neha.
Okay, Neha.
The conclusion is that only when we talk about Supreme Personality of Godhead can we refrain from useless, nonsensical talk. We should always endure to use our speaking power solely for the purpose of realizing Krishna consciousness. As for the agitations of
You can read the next one because this one is short. But just to conclude, like Prabhupada is finishing this point, and I think it's clear. We use our speaking power just like we use everything else in Krishna's service, right? That's the best way to renounce, so-called, right? So I think that's clear. So now we're gonna continue what Prabhupada talks about the mind. So please go on.
As for the agitations of flickering mind, they are divided into two divisions. The first is called Avirodha Priti, or unrestricted attachment, and the other is called Virodha Yukta Krodha. Adhering to the philosophy of Mayavadis, belief in putative results of Karmavadis, and belief in plans based on materialistic desires are called Avirodha Priti. Jnanis, karmis, and materialistic makers generally attract the attention of conditioned souls, but when the materialists, when their devices are frustrated, they become angry. Frustration of material desires produce anger.
That's directly from the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Dhyayato vishayan pumsam sangasteshu pajayate sanjayate kama krodha vijayate krodat bhavati sammoha smriti vibhrama smriti bhramshad bhuti nashat pranashyati. Those two very famous verses from the Bhagavad Gita, which, by the way, you'll be glad to hear that Master Yoda from the Star Wars series taught to Luke Skywalker.
Really?
I was in my nephew. I have an older sister who has a son who's almost my age. He's one or 2 years younger than me, and he was doing a master's in business administration at Stanford University. At the time, I was in Bhakti Charumar's Abhay Charan. So we were filming Abhay Charan San Francisco episode in San Francisco, and my nephew happened to be in Stanford, which is just, also in San Francisco. So we went to see a movie together, and at that time it was Star Wars whatever number it was. And I remember I had already tried, several years to make my nephew become a devotee and turn him on to Krishna consciousness, and he just wasn't interested, and I was kind of heartbroken because I loved him and I still love him, and I wanted him to become Krishna conscious, but what can you do, So I remember we were watching this movie, and at one point Yoda, Yoda, like the green little yogi. If you don't know Yoda is, don't worry. It is not important for your Bhakti Shastri grade. But those of you who have watched Star Wars, he's a little kind of a sadhu, like a little rishi, with green ears, long ears, and he speaks in broken language, and he's very wise, and he has these siddhis, Laghima and whatever. And so at one point he's speaking to this Jedi. And he tells him. So I remember we were watching the screen. We were sitting in this movie theater, and Eric, my nephew, was next to me, and he quotes Krishna. He says, when you become attached to object of the senses, attachment grows, yes, and from attachment, anger comes. And so as he's speaking, I'm like, this is Bhagavad Gita. And when anger comes, yes, knowledge is lost. And so I remember I took my nephew's arm. It's like, that's Krishna God. That's the Bhagavad Gita. I've been telling you, it's right there. Yoda is saying it. Yoda is saying it. Okay, who's next to read? And this we'll probably stop right now at this last paragraph. Maybe someone who would like to read. Okay. Was that? Go ahead.
Similarly, the demands of the body can be divided into three categories: the demands of the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. One may observe that these three senses are physically situated in a straight line as far as the body is concerned, and that the bodily demands begin with the tongue. If one can restrain the demands of the tongue by limiting its activities to the eating of prasada, the urges of the belly and the genitals can automatically be controlled. In this connection, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Sharira Vadya Jadendya Taikar, Jive Phele Vishay Sagare, Tar Madhe Jivati, Lobamaya Sudharmati, Take Jeta Katana Samsare, Krishna Bada Dayamaye, Kari Bare Jiva Jay, Swapisad Anadalobai, say Anamrit Khao, Radha Krishna Guna Gao, Preme Dato Chaitanya Nitai. Oh Lord.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? Sorry, but before you read it, isn't it funny that we sing this song in a very joyous melody? Na 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 na. It's like a super joyous child song, right? But the translation is, this material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death. I always find it funny how the lyrics are so so opposite to the melody in which we sing it, Go ahead, read the translation.
Oh Lord, this material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to that. Somehow or other, we have fallen into the ocean of material sense enjoyment, and of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and uncontrollable. It is very difficult to conquer the tongue in this world. But you, dear Krishna, are very kind to us. You have sent this nice prasada to help us conquer the tongue. Therefore, let us take this prasada to our full satisfaction and glorify your lordship. Shri Shri Radha and Krishna in love call for the help of Lord Chaitanya and Prabhu Nityananda.
Jai. Mahaprasad ki jai.
Jai.
We'll end with a short story that maybe Bimal Prasad Prabhu or some of you have heard. It's the story of Jayananda Prabhu. Jayananda Prabhu was one of the early disciples of Prabhupada in San Francisco. He passed away before Prabhupada. He passed away in early 77 or late 76. He was like the first one to start the Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada even instructed that there should be a photograph of Jayananda Prabhu on the actual cart of the Rath Yatras. And in many countries, maybe also in India, I don't know if you have Rath Yatra in Pakistan, but they put a photograph of Jayananda Prabhu. And he was known for his love of prasadam and his love of distributing prasadam. And so it's a sweet story. One day he arranged to have a prison engagement. In other words, to have kirtan and a program inside a prison for prisoners. And so he told some devotees to cook a huge amount of halava, and he offered it. So they had these trays of halava in the back of the car, and he was driving, and they were driving across the San Francisco bridge from Berkeley, actually, to some jail, some prison in San Francisco. You heard that story, Bimal Prasad Prabhu?
I think so. Okay, carry on. I think I've heard this. Yeah.
So as they're driving, and Jayananda had it all planned out. But so as they're driving, Jayananda Prabhu says, "Hey, whatever. Hey, Govinda Das, let me try the halava. Give me a little bit of halava." So as he's driving, the devotee gives him a little plate of prasadam, and as he's driving, he honors the halava, and he goes, "Wow, this halava is delicious. Just give me another serving, please." So he's the senior devotee. Nobody says anything, so they give him some more. He takes it, and then he says, "Govinda, you got to taste this halava. It's really good. So go ahead, serve yourself some." So he started taking, and then there was Dhanavir Maharaj at that time. Dhanavir Maharaj is very strict, and rules and regulations. and he's seeing the halava like become less and less and less because it's being eaten by all the devotees. And he's like, "Guys, come on, guys, you have to control your tongue. This prasadam is for the poor prisoners. We get prasadam every day. Come on, think of them." And Jainan's like, don't listen to him. Serve yourself some more. And Dhanavir is like starting to flip out, like, "Guys, you're such neophytes. How can you be so selfish? Control your tongue. And so by the time they arrive at the prison gate, all the halava was gone, all of it. And Dhanavir is like, I can't, but I'm so ashamed of you all. And so, they get to the gate, and the police security guard says, "Who are you guys?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're the Hare Krishnas here for the program. You probably have us on your list." So the police guard looks and goes, "Yeah, you okay?" And then he puts his head inside the car and he goes, "You guys know you're not allowed to bring any food, right?" And Jayananda says, "Yeah, I know." So he had used the excuse, knowing well that they couldn't distribute prasadam. He just told the devotees to cook this big thing of halava so they could all take prasadam on the way to the jail. And it's a sweet story.
Never heard this. This is
These are the early days of ISKCON, when everybody's living in a temple and it's very austere and there's no money, and so even taking some halava is like it's like Krishna consciousness, sense gratification. It's like, wow, it's transcendental sense gratification. For now, nowadays we may think, okay, what's the big deal, like halava, but back then when you're like living in a temple and you don't know how you're going to pay the bill tomorrow, and you're going 9 hours a day out on Harinam Sankirtan in the streets, and prasadam is like everything you have, all you have. Okay, Prabhus, we'll continue tomorrow, huh?
Jai.
It's
really, this is the halwa. This is the halwa you are serving. Thank you, Chandrasekhar Prabhu. Thank you so very much. All glories to Chandrasekhar Prabhu. Chandrasekhar Prabhu ki jai ho, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sorry for
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji.
tomorrow.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.